You're listening to Soaring Through the Depths, an innovative New Age podcast. We are Lindsay Marin, integrative multidimensional healer and spiritual mentor,
and Andrea Lauren, spirit counsel medium, healer, and intuitive life coach.
Join us as we talk all things spiritual, lifting you into the awakening of your divine potential.
Dive deep with us into the body, mind, spirit, and far beyond as we explore healing, expansion, creation, and the evolution of humanity to the next level of consciousness.
This is Soaring Through the Depths.
Welcome. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Lindsay.
Today we will be discussing the breaking down of old systems, false belief patterns, and ways of being that are bringing old growth cycles to an end, ushering in the beginning of new cycles and energy that propels us further on our awakening journey.
This is part 2 of a 3-part series we're doing called #CoronaPassion. So today we're going to be discussing what has taken place over the past few months, what's been happening on an energetic level, how this relates to the awakening process, and we'll also be offering some guidance and advice on how to confidently navigate these changes within your own life.
Yes. Okay, just briefly, I want to touch on real quick what a growth cycle is. It's these cycles that we go through in our lives that holds growth and expansion through lessons learned that helps propel us forward. So they all have beginnings and endings, and we are seeing that collectively and personally now play out for us. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it's something that happens over a lifetime. We have an end and a beginning and an end, but it's also something that happens within our life where we have certain amounts of time where something new starts, something old ends, and it's continuous cycles that we kind of move up level each time we jump into the next one.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in, and we're going to start with our own personal experiences that we have been facing ourselves since all of this, the new energy and the wave of everything coming through. So start.
Yeah. And this, I just wanted to say how this really took off with the changes that we've had so far in 2020. But looking back now, I can see where a lot of this, even for like clients I've seen, and I know with you too, that a lot of this started before the start of this year. And it was almost like gearing us up for what was to come.
Right.
So, yeah. So for me personally, one of the biggest things that changed for me on a physical level was selling our house that we had lived in for 13 years. This was something that we struggled with for a really long time because we had such an emotional attachment to it. It's where we had our kids, and we, have raised our kids and had a lot of, really didn't think that we could get rid of this house because we felt like it was a part of us.
And the trees.
And I love my trees. I didn't want to leave
beautiful, gigantic trees in the back yard.
So, but it was a slow process, but my husband and I realized that it was time to move on slowly, but surely. There was like signs kept happening that showed us that it was time to get out. And it was funny because toward the end of it, things actually started breaking in the house. Like the last week we were in there, things started falling apart. And I was like, I think the house is ejecting us. It's showing us it's time to get out.
Yeah.
So yeah, but one of the coolest things with that, it was one of the hardest things that my family has gone through. But after the fact, it was really cool to see how we really realized how much we were attached to it, but it was like a false sense of home, a false sense of security. So a lot of what I've been going through in my own personal life is a release of material objects, realizing because we did bounce from house to house after for a little bit. We're like just now getting settled. And that's a whole other story. But through that process, really realizing like, what is it that really matters underneath all of these material things that we had collected over the years. We got rid of so much stuff. And really along with that, that's like cleansing energy too. So it felt really, really good to get rid of things and realize, I think one of the best things that I realized from that was I am not, I'm not attached to any physical location. I can come and go if I want to. And it was just such a relief to realize that I don't have to hold on to that anymore.
Now,
So
would you,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, just a quick question. Because this was in your recent past, like towards the end of 2019, kind
Yeah.
of leading up like a precursor for this
Mm-hmm.
energy. Would you say through the signs and symbols that you were seeing,
Mm-hmm.
did it provide that clarity for you at that time that this is what you knew? Or is this kind of like you looking back in hindsight, you can see the
Oh
clarity
yeah.
of it?
I think for me, and I know for you too, like being as self-aware as we are, we do notice these things maybe more than others, but that's also why we're here teaching because we want
Yeah.
others to see this too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was able to see during it, or no, before it, there was actually an instance where, we knew we had to leave for a while. We had college students next door that were driving us crazy. We had, the house was a lot of upkeep. It was there were a lot of things that drove us crazy, but we were so tied to this house. But there was one instance where we found another house that we really liked, and it looked like it might work out, and it was like we got really excited about it and started visualizing being there and how we were going to decorate it and what we were going to fix up. And then it ended up not working out. And I thought, well, why would that come into our presence, our awareness, if it wasn't meant to be? And then I realized that it was there to show us that we could live somewhere else and be happy. And before that, it
Right.
wasn't an option. So it was kind of like things like that. And it kind of grew as we went along. So, yeah, so that was probably one of the biggest things or no, that was the starter of being able to see it. And it did progress along the way.
Right. So by the time you're moving into February, March
Mm-hmm.
timeframe, and with the COVID taking place and everything starting to play out collectively, how did that affect you personally in your life at that point, stage in time?
Um, well, we had just gotten settled we were in a house in between the one we're in now and before. So we had kind of just gotten settled. Um, and it was funny because I always feel like the energy of the collective energy, the energy of the world kind of goes along with what you are dealing with in your personal life. And it was funny because this house we were in, we had bought to use as a rental property, and it was like a holding place. It was tucked away in this little town and wasn't really where we wanted to be, but it almost felt like we were there to bunker down for what was to come. It was almost, it had that feel before this whole quarantine thing even started. So, and I took it on an energy level of, okay, it's time to incubate. It's time to, whatever changes are happening energetically, it's going to happen in this house. And it was almost as soon as the quarantine started to lift, that's when our other house became ready and available, and we moved out. So it really it was like the caterpillar in the cocoon, ready to be, incubating, like growing, changing inside, ready to come out at the end.
Yes, you were definitely blanketed there, like
Right. Yeah.
in that house, and it did. Do remember for you, it did provide a lot of comfort in the
Yeah.
fact of uh, some of the things within the home,
Mm-hmm.
like it just makes you're like, it's small, it's quaint, so it's not as much to clean, and like I feel like I have more time to do certain things, and
Yeah. It was
so
minimalist.
yes, it was like
Yeah.
this catalyst within that holding stasis period for you
Mhm.
that allowed you to put more focus and emphasis on yourself personally, not
Big time.
necessarily your external reality and what was going on
Right.
within
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
two, you still had things in boxes. So it wasn't, you weren't distracted with everyday life
Yeah.
tasks
Yeah.
and things,
Yeah.
especially because, with you being a homeschool mom, you're out on the go a lot with your kids and, always doing activities, and even that all stopped. So it
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
did propel you forward, like internally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the things that came up internally, that's a whole different story. So it really was like, okay, I no longer have to be outside of the house. I no longer have to take care of the house so much. So it really was a lot of time of self-reflection. And this is something that we did together, but also personally. And I was going to say, one of the biggest things that I worked on in the beginning of all of it was I was embracing the loss of control. And that really came about with loss of control of what's going on around us, I think is where it sort of started. But it branched into seeing where I was really trying to control aspects of my life that weren't controllable. And that involves my husband, my kids, the house, things like that. I started to come to a place where I was able to release the control. And it was amazing how things started to flow. What it really came down to was I realized that it all stems back to love and where we feel loved and how we feel loved. And I think with Andrea's help, I was able to see that I had been controlling things because I was afraid that if I didn't, other people wouldn't step up to the plate, or other people wouldn't, if I didn't control how people loved me or cared for me, that they might not care for me on their own. And it was really kind of sad to bring up and tap into, but at the same time, it was uncovering this old belief pattern, this old system that doesn't work for me anymore. It was like this constant struggle to hold on to the control. And when I was doing that, things were starting to fall apart. My kids were starting to lash out. My relationship was really not doing well. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of arguing, and it was really me just trying to push and push and push and it was just not happening anymore. It was falling apart.
Yeah.
So that
with the main
really
end goal being this vision you created for yourself, and what you learned from that and what you've stepped into gracefully. It's just accepting and surrendering to the flow of the universe, to the guidance of your soul and your spirit team, and embracing the change without that control. So
yeah,
it really is a beautiful thing.
it really helped it flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it couldn't have before.
Right.
I wasn't letting it.
Yeah. And like you said, it hurt, and it was kind of sad. But as you're going through this, you realize too that going through it, it doesn't hurt as bad going through it or revisiting where the source of that behavior or pattern came from as it did when you were experiencing it in that time and place in your life. So, and then we also, I know that I've done this with you multiple times, but with this one in particular, we would ask questions. So I would ask you questions and just trying to dig deeper to figure out where the source of that lies. And I know we talked about that in part 1 of this 3-part series, about asking yourself questions and then asking another question based off of that answer. And so this is a perfect example of where we did utilize that tool, and you were able to find the source of where that came from. So by doing that, you were able to heal it and release it, which brought about that, a huge change within your life.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's healing it on that lower level, like that deeper level helps it all just heal on the surface too.
Right.
Yeah. And it's been a beautiful thing. So yeah. And other than that, I mean, there was the release of control, learning more about how I experience love, which I really thought that I was good, but I wasn't. And this stems from the way I was raised, the way my parents were raised. That has all affected the way that I, look for love in people. And I did realize through this that my relationship with my husband was not working the way that it had been. And that he and I had been looking for love from each other in ways that neither of us were equipped to give. So that really started a big change on my relationship level with my husband too. And that's been something that's still ongoing and shifting right now.
All of your relationships in your life.
Oh yeah. My family. Yeah. And with my kids. And and I know you can relate to that too. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Yeah. So do you want to talk about your experience? Like what,
Sure.
so I guess leading up, because I know that for you, this all started before 2020 hit
Yes.
also.
Yep.
And has kind of, there was like the getting, you had a moment also of almost foreshadowing for what was to come, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I would say the pre-clips to this energy that we're in right now probably started about a year before, roughly
Mhm.
about a year. Same for me. And I started to see changes taking place within my home. That again, I just want to touch on really quickly that with these growth cycles, yes, we're all feeling and experiencing the same energy that's coming through, but it's going to affect us on a personal level uniquely to our lives and our energy at, all in different ways. So for me, my in this precursor energy that was taking place prior, I started to see myself bringing or experiencing levels of clarity where there was like a lack of self-love, a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-sustainability and independence. And all of these things started to come up into my awareness. And I'd say probably around in the fall, I started to see that play out in my relationships and in my life. And it progressed. It just continued to progress and progress and progress until I hit what I call like a tower moment. So that's where it's, you're almost like struck by lightning that comes from the grace of God in the universe. And it just shakes everything up in that split second. And for me personally, we had a flood, or we experienced a flood within our home. And I was the only one home that day. And at the time of the flood, and when all of this was taking place, and the flood started on my second story, and it was like pouring down onto my first floor through my vents in my floor, and the, smoke alarms going off, like all of these things are happening. And I just like broke,
Yeah.
because I realized it was so much bigger than me, and I couldn't handle all of it. So I guess for me too, there was also that level of control, that fight or flight, the fear, all of that taking place. And it just swallowed me whole, and I just broke open. And even though that was a really difficult experience for me to go through, I am so blessed to have had that experience. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that every day, because by it breaking me open, all of the things that were no longer serving me, these self-limiting beliefs, these conditioned behaviors and patterns that I learned as a child, whether I taught them to myself per the experiences I was going through, or from family members or my community, all of those things that were not serving my highest good, or where I was, my growth was taking place, just all came out. So the latter winter part of 2019 into 2020, I was processing all of those different aspects, sorting through each one of these broken pieces, trying to figure out what I didn't want to keep, what I was going to mend within myself. So for me, it was a lot of internal aspects. But as we went into COVID and we started experiencing all of these changes externally, and then within the home, that's when the main focus of my relationships within my life, or I should say the relationships in my life, became the main focus. And that was with all of my family, my children, my husband. And so I was able to see a lot of clarity and having like spiritual downloads, is what I call them, come into play. And kind of same thing as you, like started just to see how the ways I was going about things was not serving my family collectively within our home. It wasn't serving my highest good in regards to my self-worth, or even to the worth and understanding of others within those relationships. So that is still an ongoing process for me as well. But I have had monumental growth within these past 4 or 5 months, on a internal level, as well as like bringing that out and applying it to where it's starting to show externally within my life. So that's what I've been going through.
I wanted to touch on the fact that also in the beginning of all of it, as I recall with us talking, that you had a lot of physical issues going on that like right before the whole breakdown of your house, you had a lot of physical issues too, that it was like being sick and having these like different weird things wrong, like going wrong with your body, that where it was almost like all of these old patterns of worry, because I know you were definitely much more of a worrier when this all started.
Oh yeah.
And hypochondriac, let's say.
Yes. I'll own it. I will own that one. I definitely,
They almost like, it's almost like they all came to a head because you had a lot of things coming up and breaking down. And what I saw with you was after the flood, when you kind of had to take the focus off of yourself, I think that's almost when it started to resolve. But also I did want, and we will get into this more in the next episode, because the next one is more about like self-worth and finding your true self. But I did notice a shift in you immediately following that. It was, I need a break. It was like, I've broke and I need to get away. And finally realizing I don't have to take all the responsibility on myself. I can outsource. I can move out of this and take time for myself. And I really felt like watching you go through this was like, that was really the beginning of you stepping in and saying like, wait a minute, I can't do this all on my own. So what else do I have? Okay, I guess I have to start working on myself. I have to start trusting
yeah, because I realized like there was no one coming to save me. I had to save myself. And I've never been one to really be a victim of my life. I never saw myself in that sense, but I didn't necessarily have that leadership role within myself as well. And all of that like pertains to life experiences that I had that I was not consciously aware of, was creating these beliefs and these patterns. Mm-hmm. So
it was more digging, just like when
more digging and more acclimating and learning. And when you're releasing things and it's not a pleasant experience, and then you come out of that releasing and then you have clarity, then the work really starts. You have to start applying that new way of being. And I think for me, coming out of that, we'll say savior syndrome, realizing that I really only had myself to rely on, that's when I let go of the waiting, the not taking, I don't want to say not taking responsibility, but expecting it to be divvied out elsewhere because I wasn't the leader. And so now at that point, stepping in and becoming the leader of my own life, that's when I started to have to grow within my self-love, my self-worth, that independence, who I was and what I really wanted for myself. Right. And by doing that, all of those things started to like fade away. So like the illnesses, the worry, and it started to turn into like independence and empowerment and, fighting for my life really is what it really came down to, was fighting for my true authentic self, my life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can totally, I felt very similar through this whole process.
Yeah.
So let's jump into really on a collective level. So we kind of talked about our own personal experiences, and maybe our viewers, our listeners can relate to some of that. We are going to go into a little bit more what that can look like. If you didn't have a big move, you didn't have a flood in your house, it can look a lot of different ways. Yes. So we're going to get a little bit into what's happening collectively, and how this is also playing out in the energy that we're experiencing right now in this world.
Yeah. And when we say collectively as well, that doesn't necessarily mean like what you're seeing on a grand scheme in the world at large. It could collectively even be as simple as people you work with, the community that you live in, your family members and your
Right.
friendships, you know, relationships, that is your collective community. And so one of the big players within this change that we're all experiencing is energy that is coming into our planet from our galaxy, our solar system, and all of those areas. We're all affected by the different planetary bodies and just all of it at large. And we've been experiencing quite intense, large amounts of energy coming in. We also have planets. I'm only going to like touch like small blip on this because I don't want to get.
And I just want to put out there like that you are the astrology person in this duo. Like,
Yes.
like Andrea is really good with like keeping up with what's going on astrologically. So with the alignment of the planets and just the way that affects the energy changes depending on all of the astrological factors and how that comes into play in our personal lives and the collective.
Right. And I still feel like a complete babe when it comes to this because there's so much to learn. It's like the hardest version of calculus. So, but astrologically, we are experiencing, when we started to experience all of these changes rapidly taking place around us and within us, there was a lot of movement going on astrologically. And we had what is considered retrograde planets, where the energy, it looks like the planet's moving backwards, but in reality, it's not. It's just slowing down. And so that energy starts to become internalized as where it coming in you and out of you. You're experiencing it and then you're releasing it or playing it out. It comes in and it's slow, it's more dense, and it starts focusing on certain aspects of the vibration that energy, that specific energy holds. And so with that taking place, it started this upheaval and this intense focus on primarily right now what we're seeing is the way we're doing things. Is this working for us? The way that we are approaching relationships in our lives, is it healthy? Is it a collective, what's the word I'm looking for? Collaboration within your relationships. Is it healthy? Are you working together? Are you experiencing, the communication? What's serving you? What's not serving you? I mean, like how we both experience in relationships. I know that I've seen the energy play out to where it's highlighting all of these aspects within my own life. And then also as well, collectively. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really bringing us to a place of, it's like almost everything is sort of coming to the surface in a way it's almost like the universe is jumping out at you and saying, this doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Where I saw a lot of this, not so much on an astrological level, but really during quarantine, especially, I just want to touch on the fact that with the external world being so shut down, that it did go hand in hand with these energies coming in. It was like, okay, and now it's time to bring this in and self-reflect. Right. And some people chose to completely ignore it and stay in this state of the victim of, I can't believe this is happening to me, staying in this state of fear. I'm afraid of what's going to come. I'm going to be like a frightened little mouse and hide in my burrow. But a lot of people have taken this and made changes. And where I was seeing a lot of, I've seen relationships break down within my own world, within my external world, like with extended family and friends. I've seen relationships break down. I've seen a lot of people go through job changes. And it's funny, some of them happened right before quarantine, and that actually ended up serving them. I know, like even my mom, and I heard a story yesterday about someone who had a job taken away, like a job end that looked like a really bad thing, but it turned out it was just in time for quarantine, where it would have been really bad if they had to go in, like they would have been on the front lines had they not lost this job. So it's kind of interesting to see, but really, even like during quarantine, like a good friend of mine decided, hey, I want to be home with my kids more. And my wife is making good money now. And I can do this and spend more time with our child and, and be a better father. So there were a lot of those things where it was like the energy of the world shifting us into this space of self-reflection really helped a lot of people start to see what is it, like it gave you a chance like to look at what doesn't serve me anymore.
Right.
And how after quarantine, do I want to go back to how things were?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because that is kind of one of the, witty ways that the universe works, is that it
Mm-hmm.
gives you ample amount of time and signs and symbols
Yeah.
of what needs to change. And
Yeah.
if it is for your highest good on a soul level, there will come a point in time where it's like, okay, well, we've given you everything we could give you, but your soul's ready to move forward. So it's like, well, pow, and then
Bam.
it's like
Yeah. It's gone.
everything kind of falls apart to make you fall into place
Yeah.
of where you're supposed to be.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And it can look really scary, but if you can look at it from this perspective and look at it as a place of like, okay, from a place of, if this is coming up for me, it must be like this big change is probably coming up for something it's what we were talking about, ending of a cycle.
mhm.
So if it is your job, okay, it's at the end of a cycle. Yeah, I was there for so many amount of years. I have all my friends, but it turns out you've evolved, you've grown, and maybe you didn't even realize it, but you will realize it once you're out of it. And once you step into that new position or decide to stay home or whatever it is that you end up doing, you'll be able to see it like looking back, even if you
Yeah,
don't see it going into it,
yeah.
how
It's
it ends
funny
up
because
serving
I
you.
feel like the thing we're gonna learn the most is the truest meaning of hindsight is 2020. With everything
Yeah.
that's taking place with this, when you're
Right.
able to like
Yeah.
look back,
Mhm.
you really can see, wow, okay, this really makes sense why all of this happened, and it
Right.
happened for my highest good.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think people are really going to be able to resonate with that
Yeah.
statement.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then also too, it's just, it is raising the vibration um, of us personally as well as collectively,
Mhm.
just by, when people are releasing these things and they're going through this, even if you are experiencing lower emotional bodies or higher, so or fluctuating, whatever, it's releasing, it's all coming up, which is
Mhm.
making it lighter, and it's raising the vibration collectively. And so that is, ushering
Yeah.
in more energy and more growth and more expansion. So overall, it's, what's the saying that we always say to each other? They never said it would be easy, but that it would be
Oh,
worth it. And
yeah.
so
It would
this
be
is
worth
one of
it.
those scenarios where this is not easy by any means, but it
Yeah.
is
It's
so worth it.
so worth it. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Um, I was going to, nope, I lost it. Maybe move on to the
Oh,
next part.
I wanted you to talk a little bit about your, within your healing work, how you started to see the
Oh, right.
stuff come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the most interesting things is like, right. It was actually like before this, but into this, because I actually did some healing work with people during quarantine over a distance. And it was interesting to see that, first of all, people kind of like people close to me kind of come out of the woodwork. People who I've said, I don't try to push my stuff on anybody, but it's always available to those around me. And I've seen people, and I can feel it energetically when suddenly they'll text me or call me, and it's like they've hit this breaking point where they realize I can't do this anymore. And I love seeing them at that point, even though like that's a low point for them. But I'm like, yes, you're getting ready. You're getting ready. So I've seen people go, like some of the healthiest people that I know go, like one of my very good friends go through a cancer scare or through cancer, where I can tell, and this person can tell too, that it really is just time to release all of the old patterns, all of the old belief patterns, because really what it stems down to, our physical body is directly affected by our emotions, our belief patterns, not just what's going on around us physically. Really,
Right.
I would say more than anything, our physical body is influenced by our emotions. So when we start to see these things come up, it really is like, it's time to start digging down. Well, what emotions and beliefs am I holding on to that are no longer serving me? So I did see them come up in physical ways for a lot of people, or like maybe, so I've seen people all of a sudden they have a foot injury. And it's, the funny part is that most of these injuries that I've seen, the person experiencing them, it's like this came out of nowhere. They're like, I didn't even do anything, or it was something really just kind of not silly, but like something you wouldn't have expected, in a way, like a way that you wouldn't have expected it to happen, just really bizarre. And like one day you're good and the next day you're not. And I've been seeing people like reach out for help to me, which is a beautiful thing, because to me that signifies, okay, this isn't working. I need something on an alternative scale, because the way that even the systems of the medical systems are not working and serving people anymore.
Right. Well, that's even a sign too that it shows their soul at work, because running to a Western doctor, they're coming to you to do energy, trying to figure out, you know, what's really going on. I always like to say that our physical body is almost like a computerized dashboard of your car. It just gives you signs and symptoms of things that aren't in alignment with yourself energetically, or your energetic body. And, you know, Lindsay was really the one who helped me evolve in that aspect and come out of that hypochondriac way of being. And she empowered me through the knowledge of that look, your body is just trying to tell you what's going on. You just have to listen to it. And so, you know, over time, she, you know, taught me how to do that, and how different parts of the body have different
ties to emotions.
It's attached, like it's like the most ingenious like system ever built. So once you start to learn that, you can implement that, and it really does bring empowerment within you to not see yourself as a victim, or that there's something really wrong pulling you into that fear. It's really just trying to tell you, hey, something's going on. So
because when you do get sucked into the fear aspect and like, what if something's wrong with me? That's something that I had to learn also with like going back to me, like releasing control. I really feel like the control started on a physical level. It was on a physical level with me too, where I used to have a seizure disorder, and that is having a seizure is complete loss of control of your body. So going back to that and realizing on a physical level that I was trying to control my physical body really rigidly also, because of that past belief that I have the potential to be out of control. That was a big, stepping out of that was a big thing for me too. And that came with a lot of just, this is what I wanted to touch on before that I forgot that. And I've seen this over the past, like maybe a year or two in the energetic world, that in the past, when you had something that you had to work on, some kind of like something that's, you know, an issue, either whether it be emotionally, physically, whatever. In the past, it was the energy that was at play at the time. There was a lot more work you had to do to bring it to the surface, to release it. And I just wanted to let everybody know, because this has been such a big, this is what I tell all of my clients now, is that the way that this new energy that we're talking about, this new evolved energy that's available on the earth now, it makes it easier it makes it so that, sorry, it's hard to put into words. When you do become self-aware and just recognize what it is that's not working in your body, mind, or spirit, just the recognition starts the healing process. It's like so rapid now compared to how it used to be. It used to take like years of therapy. Now it really is, when you start to align with this energy, it's like, as soon as you dig it up, it's the process and release. And you and I have seen it, because we do this to each other all the time. And it's like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to go through this, because this hurts bringing this to the surface. And it's like crying. Maybe it's just getting angry. Maybe it's just kind of like being quiet for a day. And the next day it's like, I feel amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
you know,
feel
it's funny.
great.
I just want to touch base on this because this was one of the hardest ones for me to understand when I was going through releasing, and I would go through these periods of releasing that involved anger and
Yeah.
like zero patience level being triggered. And I would just get so angry and I'm like snapping at everyone and I'm like miserable. And all I keep thinking is, I got to raise my vibration. I got to raise my vibration. I can't be here. Like, this isn't helping me. But there were aspects of that held the vibration of anger that was coming up to be released. So the next day it was gone and I felt great. I was very happy. I felt lighter, and I would receive, for me personally, when I go through releasing the next day, I'm like inundated with clarity. That,
Right. It's always,
coming from that. So, don't ever judge what's being released because consciously,
or resist it. Yeah.
you're not, most 9 times out of 10, you're not going to really know exactly what that's from unless it's like a really implemented aspect that's being released. But so, not to judge that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like what I say with resistance, it's when you are going through those moments where releasing energy can look like a lot of things. Like for me, I needed to do it in the beginning of all this. I started running because I was like, physically, I needed to release energy. Every once in a while, a good cry is releasing energy. Getting angry, and you have to be careful who you direct it to, but that's also release of energy. So anything that comes up intense like that, where it's like, I don't even know where this is coming from, it's in our nature to, and especially in the spiritual world, we always think that everything has to be positive, and I know like a lot of like workers, when a lot of light workers, a lot of spiritual workers, when they're talking, you just look at them and you're like, they don't ever have a bad day. They're always so positive and they're always so happy. So I always like to bring out the fact that we all have those days where we need to release something, and it's important to allow it, because if you don't, it just builds up. It doesn't get better. And if you do allow it, it's over really fast and it feels so much better the next day.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And that kind of brings me to the next point that I want to emphasize or follow up with is being kind with yourself. Be kind with yourself, because this is not a sprint. I know for me, I'm a very zealous individual. And so when I grab a hold of an idea or, a thought process, I tend to I want to run with it. At least that's how I used to be. I've grown a lot in that aspect. But how that pertained to the beginning of my awakening was I wanted to go through all of this. I wanted to learn everything that I needed to do all at one time. And I was ready to hit the ground running. It doesn't work like that. The spiritual growth, the awakening process, the evolution of going through these cycles and, the endings of one as a new one's beginning, it is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And if you try to sprint through this, you are going to exhaust yourself beyond belief. And you're going to miss the most important things because, again, we talked about this in a prior podcast, but divine timing. It all comes within divine timing, and each part of that holds its own lesson. So just remember, slow and steady wins the race on this one for sure.
Yeah. And as you progress, you can really look back. It isn't really until you get to a certain point that you can stop and look back and see, oh, I have been making progress. And it is important every once in a while to check in with yourself and really give yourself a pat on the back for how far you've come, because that really, we tend to get lost in, well, I should be here. I should be here. Right. And it is about divine timing, and you're not going to get there until you're ready. And if you were thrown into it, you'd still have to take time to process it anyway. So really, you need to be patient.
Yeah.
But it is when you are able to look back at how far you've come and you can see your progress, and almost, it just changes the way, it's encouraging. It's very encouraging and helps keep you motivated.
Go ahead.
I was going to change the subject. So if you got something else.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't know about you, but I can look back at the beginning of my spiritual awakening and what I foresaw my future to be and look like, and where I was going to be, and what that, you know, at the end of this awakening process, like it ever stops, and complete night and day. I couldn't even have fathomed what my future, which is now my present, would look like then,
Yeah.
or where I thought I wanted myself to go.
Right. Where you thought you wanted to be. And it turns
Yes.
out the way that the universe has it planned out is way
So
better.
much better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much better. I wouldn't
Yeah.
change a thing. Wouldn't change a thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm well on my way of, you know, living my best life. And that's where, you know, you have to just heed that divine guidance, because you're not going to be able to plan this better yourself.
Right.
Sure.
And that, yeah. And that does go back into like, stepping into that place of trust and faith that the universe has your back. Start aligning with this, which we will talk about a little bit more and more as we go. But the more that we align with this and kind of tap back in with ourselves and our connection to source, God, spirit, however that looks for us, it does start to play out in ways that you wouldn't have expected. And it ends up being really beautiful and profound in a way that you can't, our human brains really cannot pave that path that spirit can for us. So with that, really is when we talk about following the guidance, that's what it is. It's sort of stepping back and watching and allowing these things to unfold for you, and not always trying to control everything.
Right.
Yeah, because when we control things, that's ego. And as Dr. Wayne Dyer would say, ego stands for edge God out. So when we step into that place of ego, we are really cutting off source and cutting off that flow that really takes care of a lot of things for us. We just kind of, we're like the end checkpoint, which is like yes or no. Yes, I want to follow. Yes, I think I'll follow this path. Okay. Or no, I think that's not going to work for me. After all this other stuff is kind of like laid out for us.
Right. And with your egos, you know, works with your mental body, which is really a tool for your physical vessel. So yes, they're all tied into the three, but you know, energy source is the source of all things. It's the source of life. It holds that everlasting energy. So that's
definitely intelligent, and it's more and it's more intelligent than we can fathom
here, at least that your brain can, for sure,
that our brain can fathom. Exactly.
So
I did want to go a little bit into when we do have the end of a cycle, letting it be okay. Like we did talk about releasing energy and letting that be okay, like making sure that we allow ourselves to release the energy. But the other thing is, when we do see an ending in a cycle, make sure that we need to know that it's okay to take time to mourn that loss. I know for myself, I think in the beginning of this, I started to like, when we were home during quarantine, started like browsing Facebook and looking back at relationships that I've had in the past and where people have served me along the way. So like, here's a best friend that I had when I was a teenager that I'm not in contact with anymore. And for a split second, it was, should I go back and try to bring that, start that up again, like refresh that.
Or revive that relationship.
Revive, that's the word I was looking for, revive. What I realized was it was time to if they were supposed to be in my life at this point, they would be. Unless obviously there's sometimes there's growth in you've had a falling out and it's time to resolve that. But with these relationships that I was noticing, it was, they were in my life for a certain amount of time and they're not in it anymore. And it's okay for both of us. It's time to release them. So I kind of went back and I took time to mourn all the people that have been such an important part of my life that are no longer really a part of it or as much a part of it, and take a time to be grateful for their part in my process.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny you say that, because I did kind of the same thing on my end. I actually started reaching out to some of the people that I had relationships with in the past, friendships, more intimate relationships, and just even if it was just a message, like I'd write like a small message or, a small interaction through text message or Facebook, just letting them know, this is what you really did for me in my life. And I just want you to know that I'm thankful and I'm grateful for that experience and for having you there in that time. Because I noticed, like, for me coming up, especially with relationships in the past, was signaling to me, hey, what are you heeding from this? Like, what are the blessings that came from this? And like bringing that into the awareness, and then it's like releasing itself. And then in my current reality, I was going through that as well in some of my, my biggest relationships. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Is this really happening? Is this, cause I was in the mourning process, and that mourning aspect started to make me question, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice? When I already knew on a soul level and in my heart that it was the right thing to do. But my ego and the other aspect of me was coming up and saying, wow, this is taking away our comfortability. This is taking away security. This is taking away someone that you love and care about deeply. All of these different things. How is this the right thing? So I had to learn, you got to pick one or the other. What are you going to follow? And I have learned, especially throughout my spiritual awakening, is that no matter how hard it is, that I'm going to follow my heart and my intuition, because it never steers me wrong. Because that is where I am connected to the source of all that is, and that intelligence level. So
yeah, I was going to say too, with making those decisions, because I've been going through this with my own relationship and everything too, and like relationships outside of my family union also. But realizing that the mourning that I'm experiencing, really digging into it, and it's like, well, what am I mourning actually? And a lot of it, when I start to think about it, is mourning the way things used to be in that relationship, not how things are currently.
Right.
So really digging down, it's like, okay, yeah, it would be easier to just go back to how things were, or go back to being with that person. But when you really dive in and take time to think about it, like, what part am I missing? It's, oh, that's the part that doesn't even exist anymore. That's a memory. So I'm going to take time and be grateful for that memory. But it's time to move on from it.
Right. Okay. So we have gone over some ways to identify these changes taking place, cycles ending and beginning, and how to identify that. Now we are going to touch on briefly on some techniques and ways that can help you through this process. So one of the ones that I like the most for me personally is journaling. I've learned that through journaling, taking, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, to write out what you're experiencing, what you're going through, questions you have for yourself. It can be anything you want it to be in there, but just getting out your experience, your thoughts, your feelings and emotions on paper, not only helps you to release that energy, but you can also look back on it and find a lot of clarity within that as well. And so I know for me, I'm always on the go and, hustling, bustling with kids in the house. So for me, what works the best is pulling up, I actually have a journaling app on my phone, and I can do speech to text in there or just jot things down real quick. So that's always an option too. If you have a busy life, there's a way to work around that.
Yeah. And that's great for that self-reflection too, to really realize your progress, is to be able to go back and look at what I was going through then and look at how far I've come. I love doing, because I've been journaling forever too. Another one is meditation. And meditation is something that I know a lot of us actually struggle with, but it can be really beneficial in that it quiets the mind and it can allow guidance to come through. It can allow us to kind of turn off all of it's almost a way to settle the ego a little bit, so that you can get more clear,
balance and recenter yourself.
Yeah. And I know for me, with meditation has been something that, because I'm still, one of the other things that came up for me was time management during all of this. I'm still working on my time management, that I always feel like I can't fit meditation in. So some of the ways that I do it, I honestly, like when I'm on a long drive by myself, or even a short drive by myself, sometimes I'll just sit in silence. I'll turn off the radio and I'll just let myself, because when you're driving, you're kind of in that hypnosis state of like your subconscious takes the wheel, especially when you know where you're going. And it really allows time for your thoughts to kind of come up. I consider that a form of meditation, or just taking a bath or taking a shower. A lot of clarity comes through to me when I'm in the shower. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the water or just the fact that there's no other distraction. I can kind of like mindlessly go about what I need to, and clarity can kind of come through on its own without me trying. So there are lots of ways you can meditate. Or there are also apps for that too. There's an app for that.
And we may do like a, like an extra or like a little special video or post, touching on that a little bit more in the future.
We're going to do like maybe some short videos that give you like a brief little meditation or visualization to help implement some of these things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So another one that I love, I said before about running, that physical movement is a great way to move energy, especially when you can't always consciously figure out what it is that you are feeling. Physical movement moves energy. So stretching, especially creating space in the body, helps energy move. If you're having trouble even releasing an emotion that feels like it won't move, sometimes stretching, yoga, qigong, which is actually moving energy, can all help. And there are lots of videos online that you can find, and you just kind of find what works for you. So not necessarily like hardcore exercise, but if you are having one of those days where you're feeling like aggressive and you need to get it out, by all means, do some intense cardio, whatever. But whatever feels like it's getting out what it is that you have in there that maybe you can't get out through talking or through journaling or through meditating.
Right. And even if you're having a one-off pain in the body, or you don't know exactly why you're having discomfort in that area, again, like Lindsay said, try stretching, because it could just be energy that is stagnant or stuck in that area or within that vicinity. And you'll find that by, gentle exercising or stretching that, it will dissipate and go away once you get that energy flowing.
Yeah.
So another one of my favorites is music. I love to listen to music. I have music on all the time. And it helps me to process and gain clarity within my emotional body. So, and that could be, whatever you're in the mood to listen to, or if you find that you're being guided to listen to certain types of music, or even just different songs that come on, you can get messages through that as well. That will help bring about solutions or clarity for you, with whatever you're experiencing at that time.
Yeah, I love to, every once in a while when I'm feeling like in an emotional state, I'll listen to the words or feel guided to listen to the words of a song. And it turns out that brings clarity. And even I wanted to say how my car has the little screen with the radio station on it. They'll pop, like things will pop on there that are actually like, it'll say, give me a message. Like maybe it's the name of a song or name of a station, but things are they make so much sense in the moment. And a lot of times when the sound is turned down and I look over and it says like, love yourself or something. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I swear, like my angels talk to me through my car radio station. So one that we didn't discuss before that I just remembered, getting into nature is a great way to release energy, especially putting your feet on some grass. It grounds you. Leaning against a tree grounds your energy. So you want to stay grounded. You want your energy to be flowing between the heaven and the earth.
Right.
So that it can move. You're like a lightning rod. So you attract energy, but you also need somewhere for it to go. So being out in nature helps you do that. And it's also very calming and it helps balance everything.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That is one of my go-tos, especially when I'm feeling like a lot of energy within me. It's just going out and putting my feet on the ground, because it just, the earth just absorbs that energy out of your feet. And it's just like cleanses you out. So that is a good one. Good job, Linz.
Yeah.
All right. So the last one that we have on our handy dandy list here is getting a reading or a healing session done. If you've tried these different or tried to implement these different techniques or some of your own, and you're still finding that you need a little bit of extra help or guidance in that way, you can always reach out to, different types of healers, mediums, for readings, guidance readings, so on and so forth. I know that's
not to toot our own horns, but we are pretty
amazing.
Yeah.
We're well seasoned.
Yeah.
Definitely been on this ride for quite some time.
Been on this ride. Yeah. So we are ready and well equipped to guide other people along the way. And one of the reasons we work so well together is we complement each other. So we've had a lot of people who see both of us, kind of not simultaneously, but like within the same, few weeks, where I'll do a healing session and then they'll do, then Andrea will do a reading, and they end up, it's really fun because we'll talk about it after, like, well, did you get this? I got this? What did you think about this? And we can give that clarity to people after the fact, and kind of come at it from different angles, like the more physical and energetic approach and the more emotional, spiritual approach.
Right.
So yeah, that's, and really you want to pick somebody, we've talked about this previously though, but somebody, if you are going to find somebody outside of us, find somebody that resonates with you, somebody that makes you feel good.
Yes.
Yeah. And brings perspective, like change in perspective for you. It makes you think and question yourself, not telling you what to do, what's wrong with you, those types of things. You want somebody who's lifting you, empowering you, which I can guarantee we will do for you.
Yeah. I gotta love it. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of the part 2 of the 3-part series.
Yes.
Real quick, if someone does want to reach out to you for a healing session, can you just briefly remind everyone how they can do that?
So right now, I think the best way to contact us, we do have our email is soaringthroughthedepths@gmail.com, but we also have put together a Linktree page where we have links to everything that we're doing, because we're kind of slowly branching out into everything we can. And we are now on YouTube. We are on, we're on Instagram and Facebook. So all of those have links underneath for our Linktree, which will have our links to my website and to Andrea's Facebook page and her information. If you do want to get in contact with us, it has all of our information. So that's probably the best way to reach out right now. Yeah.
And that's if you're interested in more information or scheduling a healing session with Lindsay or a mediumship reading with me. That's the source.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and Lindsay briefly talked about this, but I'll reiterate, we are now on YouTube. We have our YouTube channel. It is Soaring Through the Depths. And we just want to encourage everyone to, go and check it out. And, if you find that it resonates, yes, we'll have our podcast episodes on there as well. But as we continue to grow, we will be adding different material as well that it still relates to, our journey and everything, but whether it's like we're doing readings or guided meditations or, those little extras.
You can find them on there.
Yeah, you'll find them on there as well. And if you do, we would gladly or kindly ask that you like, comment, and subscribe to our media pages or outlets. So like YouTube, Podbean, because that is going to help us to be able to branch out and reach as many people as we possibly can that are going through this journey that we want to be able to bring a sense of community to and help, because that is our purpose. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to be that warrior. We're the warriorists of the spiritual evolution here on Soaring Through the Depths.
The warriors. And while you're at it, if you are listening to us on iTunes, please take a couple minutes, even less than a minute. I think it takes like literally 1 second to give us a rating. 5 stars. If you like what you heard. So thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. And we really appreciate all of your, all of the positivity we've been hearing about this. And, we are excited to continue and spread the word.
Yes, we really are. And it's been such a blessing to have people come up and say, hey, we really like your podcast, or wow, that was, the two of you together really gave me this like calming effect. I know we had somebody pass Lindsay the other day saying, I really like your podcast. And that it like made us feel really good. But most importantly, let us know that, we're on the right track.
And it's being heard. Yeah. So really good. So thank you.
All right. Well, make sure you tune in next week for part 3 of our 3-part series, #CoronaPassion, where we will be discussing
the coming back to the self, finding your self-worth, really realizing what it is that you want out of life. And I think all of this that we've touched on so far is kind of like leading up to that. So it's going to be good. And it's going to kind of bring this whole series full circle.
Yeah, I was just going to say full circle, where, you'll be able to see how you're coming out of fear and into trust, how these systems are breaking down, identifying them, but then taking all of that and moving forward with a sense of confidence that you are going to be able to do this in your own journey.
And create the life that you deserve.
Yeah.
That you always wanted, that you always deserve, or that you didn't even know existed yet. Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Soaring Through the Depths with Andrea Lauren
and Lindsay Marin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on Soaring Through the Depths. Make sure to visit us on Instagram and Facebook at Soaring Through the Depths, where you can catch important news, information about upcoming shows, free giveaways, and exclusive content. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on Podbean, or you could simply tell a friend. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe button now. Until then, this is Soaring Through the Depths with Lindsay Marin and Andrea Lauren.